Now that we are well into fall and winter is quickly approaching, the days are getting shorter and running in daylight is becoming harder. Oisel's premium reflective collection is designed with runner safety in mind. Both highly visible in the dark but subtle in the daytime, thanks to the tonal reflective print that only shines bright when reflecting the light. From tights, shorts, jackets, and tanks to accessories like hats and gloves, with Oisel's reflective collection, you can stay safe and stay seen. It is dark here in Cleveland where I've been running, so I just love Oisel's reflective collection. I'm a big fan of the firecracker tights. The bird pattern is so cute, and they look all over sparkly at night. To check out the firecracker tights and the rest of the reflective collection, go to oisel.com/collection/reflective, or even easier, click the banner link at the top of the Hear Her Sports website at hearhersports.com. You are listening to Hear Her Sports, a podcast for active, adventurous women who love hearing stories from other active, adventurous women. I'm your host, Elizabeth Emery. In every episode, I introduce a female athlete or woman in sport through a conversation about who they are and the terrific work they're doing. Today, I introduce a young soccer player to follow as she progresses, Teni Charles. What I love about this episode are the details about being a young, intense, ambitious athlete on the rise. Teni is balancing that and working full-time, and she gives a sense of what that is like. For soccer fans and players, she shares how she is training. I love, too, how Teni is thinking about the broader picture of her place in sports now and in the future as a leader in women's sports. Like so many of my guests, giving back to the next generation is an essential aspect of what they do. Let's now meet Teni. Teni Charles, often known as Teni, is a women's footballer, meaning soccer here in the States. She has been playing since she was young and is currently with Team Billericay Town FC based in Essex, England. The 2021-2022 season has been full of great successes. Teni got selected to play at international level for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where she helped her home nation secure the first win on home soil. Certainly one for the history books. Adding to the success of 2022, Billericay Town FC were recently crowned champions and have secured a promotion to Tier 3. And now, Teni's journey to becoming a full-time professional footballer continues. Off the pitch, with her sports coaching and performance analysis degree, Teni is also a key voice within women's sport, helping to drive the younger generation. The struggles of losing her mom and sister at a young age has led Teni to get involved through public speaking, to be a part of the FA Women's Leadership Program, and support young female athletes in the community with similar struggles to her experiences. Her proudest achievement to date is being awarded Women's Sports Personality of the Year. I am so excited to have you here, Teni, and thanks so much for reaching out. I appreciate it. It's great.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
Sure thing. Could we start with some basics of where you are right now? Because I gather you've been doing a lot of traveling.
I have indeed. Yeah, I've been doing a whole load of traveling for the past 2 months. So I'm currently back home, which is London in the UK. It's really, really good to be back home and kind of get back into my usual routine, I guess. But yeah, recently have been away. So I went on a 7-week trip to St. Vincent, which is where both my parents are from. I went there for international duty. It was an amazing experience to kind of get called up for my first international cap, which was really, really good and really exciting.
So exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really great. And then also had a great opportunity to I came back for about a week and then went away for a work trip to the Netherlands. I went to Amsterdam for about a week. So now I'm officially back, and now I'm definitely home in the UK in London.
I have so many questions already. Okay, so let's start with the last thing you said. You were in Amsterdam on a work trip. What were you doing?
Yeah, so I'm currently working as a growth executive for a load of different sports clients at the moment. So I went out there just to have a few business meetings and kind of talk to them about, I guess, how my company can help theirs grow. There's a really cool project sort of offloading within the transition of sport at the moment. So I know like with Formula One, there's obviously a lot of changes that are happening. Also with the men's Premier League season obviously coming to an end, there's the whole transfer season, people getting signed and stuff. So my company kind of deals with any of the marketing or media behind that. So I'm often traveling around to some really, really cool sports clients, actually kind of having great conversations around that.
Are you working full time?
I am indeed, yes.
Wow. Wow. That sounds like
Yeah.
a lot.
It's a very heavy schedule. I mean, one day would be great to. I mean, it's amazing that obviously my club have managed to win the league and now get a really good promotion. We've been working hard for that all season. But yeah, I've had to work full time and also play and train and stuff, which is definitely not easy. But I'd say for sure, women's athletes definitely understand this transition, right?
Totally. Yeah.
And I mean, the goal for everyone, I guess, any female athlete is to kind of get to a stage where you can just do sport, really, isn't it?
Hmm.
So, yeah, just continuing to work hard towards that, but also just making sure I'm enjoying what I'm doing. So, that's why I partake in loads of different programs that I'm on aside of work, and then also just really enjoying like the job that I'm working in now. So,
And one of the things that always strikes me as difficult for somebody at your level who is trying to, get even higher and become a professional, but is also working, is sort of figuring out the travel schedule. I mean, you just talked about traveling. I mean, I gather your company is understanding about that.
oh, for sure. I mean, I think that's the biggest difficulty as well. I'd say one of the biggest, especially as you make that transition. So I've recently, well, about a year ago, I would say, make transition from being a student to a full time sort of worker, and I think that's when things get a little bit more difficult for female athletes because you have the job situation. Is your job going to be happy about it? Do they allow you to kind of do things you do aside of that? And yeah, I mean, it was a difficult sort of transition. I think I was really worried about it at the time, but yeah, I had the privilege and I had the support. So book some of the days off as holiday, and then some of the days just as days off, really. And then also agreed to work remotely for the first 2 weeks whilst I was out in the Caribbean, which was again another hurdle because of the time difference, right? But it's just what you have to do when you're a female athlete trying to make it up to the top, and until you get there, you kind of have to work with it.
Did you talk to your employer about this situation prior to being hired? I mean, like, was this part of the sort of the hiring discussions?
No, so when I was hired, because this is my first call up for St. Vincent and the
Hmm.
Grenadines,
Yeah.
so I had no idea this was coming, and they've obviously been monitoring me for quite a while now, and it kind of just comes out of the blue. Really, it's kind of just a case of them kind of contacting my club and contacting my managers and saying, hey, look, you're a really great player. We kind of want you to come down to our international sort of setup and help build things over here. So, I mean, when I was interviewing with this company about a year ago, that this was not in the conversation. I mean, of course, they knew I was playing sports, but that doesn't interfere with work because I train in the mornings, I train in the evenings, and then I have my games on the weekends, right? And if I'm working, it's just 9 to 5 from a Monday to Friday. So that doesn't interfere. So, yeah, it was definitely wasn't a conversation I had to have prior to obviously getting the job.
That's interesting that you had no idea it was coming.
No, not at all. And I think also it's really interesting because I think I've had a lot of conversations recently about like, oh, how did this happen? This kind of just came out of the blue. Um, I've really, really just I'm super grateful for the opportunity because I remember specifically during that time, I originally had a 3 week holiday booked off to the Caribbean because I just wanted to go home and see my family. And then the trip, somehow turned into a 3 week holiday trip to a 7 week football trip. So, I mean, I got to see my family and I got to play for my country. And, my family that are in the Caribbean who usually don't see me play over here in England kind of got to watch me play out there, it was amazing. And, I had so many moments of like just emotionally being like up and down. And it was a perfect scenario to be honest. But yeah, I remember at the time being super, super worried about telling my work manager about it and kind of talking to them about how I kind of had that conversation with them. Or do I just book the days off? Do I not? And it's super, super scary, especially I think if you're just kind of coming out of uni like a year ago, kind of just transitioned into the working world and you don't want to lose your job, do you? So yeah.
But it's a huge deal that you got called up.
Oh yeah, massive. I mean, it's definitely great, and it's definitely great for my recognition. It's definitely great for my career as well, my progression as well. I learned so much about the type of player that I am, the type of player that I'm looking to kind of transition into and work towards, and just the complete. It's a complete different environment. I mean, playing football in the Caribbean is completely different to playing football in England or in London, right? So it was an amazing, amazing experience. I think definitely it's only going to make me a bigger and a stronger player. So hoping to continue, obviously representing them at international level throughout, from now until the foreseeable future, and then also just being able to use what I've learned to take back to my playing experiences on the field with my current club here in England, and then just continue to progress from there, really.
Sure. Well, that's one of my questions is it just seems I don't know if there could be two more different situations. England, like I think like gray and rainy and then the Caribbean is so opposite that.
Yeah. Honestly, it's amazing. I mean, there is I definitely say my body was confused when I came back. I've been in the sun for like 8 weeks. I think when I first went as well, the first week of training was like super hard. I remember asking some of the teammates, especially the club captain down there in the Caribbean, saying like, "Hey, how do you guys run in this heat all the time?" Because there is just no breeze whatsoever. It doesn't matter what time of the day you train. There is no breeze. The heat is just it's crazy. It's yeah, and having to run, and obviously you're playing for international level, right? So you're expected to kind of hit certain levels of fitness in order to deem you as fit to play the game and stuff like that. And it's super, super tough. I remember working very closely with the fitness coaches for the first 2 weeks in particular, just to make sure my body could adapt sort of as smoothly as possible. And then yeah, got back to the UK and then went back to training over here. And I was like, yes, some breeze. This is great.
What is the difference in the play? You hinted that there was a big difference between the play that you do with your club and the play that the national team is doing.
Sure. So I think across the board, I think it's fair to say that obviously the Caribbean won't have as much facilities. Well, okay, maybe not all of the Caribbean. Let's talk about my so where I'm from particularly. So St. Vincent doesn't have the same playing facilities as like they would in England. They won't have the same training setups. They may not have all of the coaching like access or staff or just equipped with all of those sort of things in comparison to what I would have here in England, right? So a lot of it was kind of them also understanding, hey, look, what do you have in England that you can kind of bring here or help us to add to this team? So I know that the next tournament coming up, which should be sometime early next year, there's going to be like loads of different changes on sort of the setup down there in the Caribbean, how we can continue to improve the girls down there. And then also up here in England, it's like very, very structured, right? And women's football is like progressing so much over here. So like you'll have like club level, which will transition all the way up to the higher age groups, and then obviously you have your different leagues and stuff. In the Caribbean, it's kind of just only one league. So everyone just kind of competes in the same boat. And, if they want to compete higher, they kind of got to go abroad. So they've got to look at, can I get myself to England? Can I get over to somewhere in Europe? Or, can I go over to the US? And then all the financial difficulties with that as well. So it's a complete different playing field. And I think they were very, very grateful to also have me as well on board, just to kind of help drive some of the girls individually and give them hope that if you're working or adding these small details to your game, which are regular things for me to do in England, then they can continue to improve and hopefully make it out to the US or somewhere in Europe to play one day.
I love that you mentioned the small details because you mentioned that quite a bit on your social media. Like, what are you talking about? What kind of small details?
Like, for example, some of the girls have no idea what strength and conditioning is,
Oh, wow.
and I mean that in the sense where like an ordinary, fitness coach would just sort of perform fitness tests and kind of test you and all that sort of stuff. Specific strength and conditioning coach will relate it to obviously your sport and your playing field, right? So like basketballers will have a different program to footballers, X, Y, Z. So I was kind of showing them the difference between that and kind of getting them to understand that like also if you're like a winger, so like someone that plays out wide in comparison to someone that's a striker, also your strength and conditioning programs can be a bit different as well. And these are how you adapt it to kind of help you build what you need specifically for your specific playing position. And that's also something I study quite a lot for my degree. So it was amazing. We had like loads of different workshops where I would help them on their program because obviously that's what I studied. And then I would kind of share with them the program that I was actively working on in England and like how often my program changes, sort of things that I need to track, like so many details, which seems basic, right? But to them, it's like, wow, this is amazing. Like no one's ever told me this before.
That's so cool that you were there with that information.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. And it was really humbling to be able to kind of take that back, because my both my parents are from St. Vincent, right? Grew up there and half my siblings were born there too. So it was really great to feel like I was adding some type of value to my country, helping young individuals specifically kind of just improve and learn a lot more about their game or themselves as an individual or as like a female athlete.
The stuff that you were teaching them, was that mostly stuff that you learned through your education because as you said, you studied that? Or was it something that most of the players, on your club team also know?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, specifically when we kind of get into the whole strength and conditioning programming and stuff like that, that was a lot of stuff that I studied, and that's what I do like on the side and stuff, and run programs for young athletes on that as well. And then in terms of like generic stuff, so understanding, really big differences between playing positions and all of that sort of thing. That's just general. That's really like any athlete or any woman's sort of footballer in England would know those things.
Hmm.
But because they don't have maybe the same coaching staffs or the same equipment, or they don't get the updates as frequently as you would get them in England. So maybe they're just a little bit behind on that.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So, in your club team, describe a little bit about, how the tier system works and where your club team fits in. And also, as part of that, like you just moved up a new tier. Like, what is the significance of that, and how is that going to change how you guys are going to, approach next season?
Oh yeah, super exciting. So this is amazing. So in terms of so sorry, your first question was just
Was
explain.
yeah, just a brief explanation because I hadn't realized about the tier system in England. So I'm hoping the listeners don't understand that either, and we can get a good description of what's going on over there.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, at the moment we're competing in the FA, which stands for Football Association, for anyone that doesn't know. So the FA National League, and we're currently in Tier 4. So the promotion means we go up to Tier 3, which essentially moves us one step closer to the top, right? So here in England, obviously you've got the Women's WSL as the top league, and then you kind of go down from there. So this transition means that next season can look a bit more full on, I would say. So moving from training, twice a week to perhaps training 3, 4 times a week in terms of more of a full time setup. It would also mean that our games, our travels are like much further out as well, which is kind of like what full time footballers do, right? You kind of, if you have an away game, you go for the weekend and you do your practices and you train for that. So that's what it means in that sense. And in terms of the playing ability, I mean, massive difference. We're
Hmm.
playing against girls who are much physically stronger, more experienced, and the pace of play is much quicker. So there is a really big difference between the two tiers, and I think it'll be really exciting to see how we get on there. And I ultimately do believe that we are ready for it because, as a club, we've transitioned so much in terms of adding in new stuff in training, making sure we have like the right group of players, adding more coaching staff in, making it very specific and adaptable as well. And and I think when we do move up, it will be a test, but it will also show how much as a club that we are ready for the step up.
That's great. It sounds like it's a more expensive program to go from 4 to 3. Is that true?
For sure,
Yeah. And
for sure.
how does that get covered? Or do you even know?
I mean, great question. Part of that I wouldn't know, to be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
that'd be a question for like the club secretary or something. But I mean, I know in terms of like funding and stuff. You mean?
Well, I mean, even just increasing the number of practices, for example, is going to cost more money, and traveling further is going to cost more money. It just, I mean, that seems to me a big indication of how big a difference it is that you were talking about. So I don't
Yeah,
know. It's just interesting.
I mean, I don't ultimately know how all of it gets covered, but I know some basics in terms of like, so all of us girls have sponsors, and my sponsor in particular, he's amazing. So they will obviously sponsor me as a player for a season, and I guess that goes as well towards the club.
Hmm.
So if we have like a group of maybe somewhere between 20 odd to 30 odd girls on the team, and all of them have player sponsorships. So all of that funding will go into the pocket for the season and kind of help out through there. And then also, I guess there would also be some funding available and stuff as well for the transition. So to support us from moving from the tier that we were in to the tier that we're going into, because obviously that transition will be equally as hard for any club, right? Yeah, I'm not really sure how the rest of it kind of gets covered, but I know that would generally be the basics understanding from a player's point of view.
And you said that you're sponsored individually by some person?
Yeah, so he actually does help out down at the club as well. But I mean, people have sponsors from anywhere. Like you can have like your parents can sponsor you or whatever. But yeah, I have a really great sponsor. His name is James. He works with the media team down at the club at Billericay. super supportive. He supports me on and off the field as well, so really helped a lot with like my transition into getting out into international duty as well, which was amazing. Of course, he pays for the sponsorship as well, which just means that whatever he contributes towards that goes to the club and helps them with sort of all the funds and stuff, or all the things that they need to pay for. So yeah, it's really cool, and I think it's a very I would say for sure it's definitely a humbling experience to have a sponsor, and especially someone um who is so supportive, because as an athlete, there's all different types of support, right? You have your coaches, you have your mentors, you might have like the club secretary and stuff, but to have a sponsor on top of that as well is amazing. And I was talking to the girls in the Caribbean about this, in fact, because they had no idea what that was.
I don't have any idea what that was. I've never heard of that. It's awesome.
Yeah, they didn't even know it was a thing. They didn't know it was existed. And I remember speaking to the St. Vincent Federation, kind of saying like, these are kind of things that can happen to kind of help the club financially as well, you know? So yeah, it's amazing. It's I feel very privileged to have him as a sponsor for sure.
And what do the sponsors get in return other than sort of the satisfaction of sponsoring an awesome player?
Great question. I mean, I'd definitely say I think free access to games, so they can just
Sure.
come to any of the games and stuff like that, and they can be as involved as they wish to be. Whether that means coming with us to the games on the weekend, coming on sort of an ad hoc basis. Maybe they want to volunteer at the club and kind of help out with the setup, setting up training sessions, or helping the media team. It's totally up to them.
And what is your training like?
So yeah, my individual training session is quite intense. So I would train in the morning. So that would often be something like a gym session or a jog, and I mean like 5 a.m. in the morning, because I have work meetings most mornings 8:30 a.m. Right. And I mean, this work from home life has definitely made things a lot easier, because it means I get
Right.
a little bit more of a lion. But I do go to the office some days. So some days, yeah, definitely up at 5 to start some training sessions. So it would be a mixture between gym sessions, individual like on the ball session, so maybe doing some drills that I know will help my specific playing position, and then a mixture of some like cardiovascular stuff outside as well, so maybe going for some 5K jogs and stuff like that. And we tend to have so we have club trainings as well, so that'll be in the evenings. So I will drive up to Essex. So from where I am, it's about a 30-minute drive. It can be quite tight and quite full on, especially with like long work days, especially if leaving the office at like 5 and having to start training at like 7. It's kind of like a, okay, let's eat some food really quick and kind of rush off to training. But I'm so used to it. Like, I've been doing this since, I would say, like early days secondary school.
Hmm.
And I used to actually go out to Florida, so IMG Academy, every single summer for 6 weeks. And they train super intensely down there. I remember I did that for like the whole of my secondary school like days. I understand what it feels like to kind of wake up in the morning, have loads of stuff like train, and then have loads of stuff to do in the day, and then still train in the evening, and then just go to bed. It's super hectic, but I really do enjoy it. And of course, I do have my rest days. Like, I'm not a robot.
Right. I want to continue talking about training, but first I have to ask, in school, you went to Florida during the summers. How did you know that you were so interested in soccer?
Oh, great question. So I have a lot of brothers. So there's 9 of us in total. 7 boys and only 2 girls. So me and my sister, and then 7 boys. And there's kind of like an age gap difference, right? So the younger half of siblings, which kind of fall on my age bracket side, are all boys. So I remember like when I was younger, as a kid, you want to go and play outside, and it's kind of like, right, the boys just want to play football. I may not actually want to do that, but what else am I going to do? Am I going to sit inside by myself? So I kind of just ended up kind of going out with them, every weekend, playing some football, then just became really good at it. And it got to a point where it was kind of like, hey, like, I'm actually better than the boys at this. So like maybe I should take it seriously. And it was great. And I think also with like my past experiences, like the struggles I've had within like my family, as I mentioned on the bio as well, losing my mum super young, and then my sister being my legal guardian for a while, and then losing her. Football was just an escape for me. It was a way out. It was like, hey, if I'm training, I'm happy and I'm not stressed. And I can still, I can have some time off where I don't think about stuff, and then just be an average kid after that. So like get schoolwork done and stuff without feeling like so down and depressed, because I know I've played football that day. So I really, really started, especially during secondary school times where I was really struggling without my mum. I really, really increased how many times I trained a day. And then I remember just researching like really, really top training camps in America. And that's when I came across IMG Academy, which is based in Florida. And I remember when I was like talking to my siblings about it for the first time, they were like, "Hey, like this is really expensive, Tini. Like we know you like football, but like it's really expensive to send you here for like 6 weeks every summer." And they were like, "Hey, if you can put together a presentation and present to me like the main reasons why you really feel like this camp is going to benefit you and help you to be a better player, then we're happy to pay for you. We're happy to send you there every summer." And I remember that presentation was like the most terrifying thing I've ever done. I was like, why am I presenting to my brothers? Like they should just be understanding.
That's awesome.
um, but yeah, I was presenting for my life because I really knew getting that experience so young as well was definitely going to make me a better player, and also I was gonna learn to be a lot more independent. You know, being away from your family so young for 6 weeks, right,
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
a time. So yeah, I went to Florida every single summer, and it was amazing. Like the training schedule was so full on there, and I learned so much about myself, and yeah, I really really loved it. So that's kind of how I transitioned into that.
That shows so much, I don't know, forethought or drive or something. It's incredible. I love it.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Cool. And it's also interesting what you said about, the sports sort of clearing your mind in a way. I was just talking to somebody about that, how, it's so important for kids, especially these days, to have an outlet to sort of clear their mind and keep their mental health strong.
Sure, for sure. And I think definitely I was speaking to so I have like a network hub sort of thing which I've been building with younger girls who are also struggling with, similar things that I struggled with as a kid. And I often tell them like sport is more than just a game. You know, you can go there, you can be happy. And sometimes if you don't feel like training, just being there is enough. You know, being on the sidelines, maybe watching your friends train or chatting to a coach or whatever. Because I mean, some of the coaches I've had are absolutely amazing. And the support I've had from them is like, it's amazing. So I always encourage the young ones to kind of find something that gives you outlet, find something that gives you that release. And I definitely say like sport is up there with one of the most like, it does that.
Do you think that's true for kids who like sports as well as for kids who maybe don't like them as much?
Yeah, I think if you're talking about being an active athlete, then yeah, for sure. I had I had a little kid who is now 13. I got introduced to him when he was 7, and he was having a whole load of problems, which I could relate to. I remember he just wasn't interested in like kicking a football, bouncing a basketball. Like he just wasn't interested in it at all. What he was interested though in was like setting up programs, so like putting the cones out or doing things
Mm,
that didn't involve as much. And this is something that I try to teach them, especially like as they're younger as well, and try to explain that like it's not necessarily about you having to be a top athlete. Like you can join a club that is not as demanding. So join like at a lower league and stuff. And it's genuinely just a social club. It's a place for you to meet others who may be struggling, who might just want to release. And if the demands are not as much, then you can still get out of it just as much as everyone else does.
yeah, I love that. Okay, so I want to go back to the training that you were talking about. So, what portion of your total training does strength take? The work in the gym, lifting weights, and that kind of stuff.
For me, it's about 50-50. For me
Oh,
personally,
really?
50-50. And sometimes it's not necessarily, so my strength and conditioning is mixed between like gym stuff and like on the field stuff. So it can be a mixture of like on the field stuff in terms of like just jumping over hurdles, 1 foot, 2 foot, those sort of things to kind of build plyometrics, and then also like lifting weights in terms of like, deadlift, squats, and stuff like that. Yeah, it's 50-50 for me. I think it's important. And one thing that I've realized a lot as well is strength and condition helps so much with prevention of injury.
Yes.
Because if you build those muscles around like those particular spots, your body just gets so much stronger. And I've had a few niggles, like every athlete's had like their injuries and stuff like that. But I often find that these injuries come about when I'm not keeping up with my strength and conditioning program.
Right.
So that's something that I try to, focus on quite a lot. And is quite important. But then I also have to understand that, I am a footballer, and the best way to get better at football is to play football. So sometimes you just have to incorporate a ball with that as well. So I've learned that quite a lot as well.
So incorporating the ball within your strength training. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, so I mean, I might do, some squats and stuff and then go do like a dribbling drill, like straight after it. I'm kind of getting both in at once. It doesn't have to be super intense all the time. It just has to be smart. It has to be specific.
And are you designing your own program?
Majority of the time, yes. I do also talk to like some coaches that I've worked with before who are specifically working in strength and conditioning, or I'll speak to like the management down at my club as well, or like the physios as well, would also have a good intake. So it's a mixture of all. But I think specifically, I'm probably a little bit OCD on it because I studied it, right? And I find these things super interesting. How you can just like build your muscle in a certain way and have like a complete different output to what you were having before. And it really helps my game. It really helps my game. And I think also my studies was super important towards that as well, because as I was studying this, I was kind of incorporating it as into myself, right? So yeah, it's a mixture of all, I'd say.
Your club team is taking a big leap, and you personally are taking a big leap by going to your national team. So, are you tweaking your program at all, or what are you very specifically going to work on between now and your next matches?
Yeah, great question. So we've just finished the season. The new season is due to start sometime like September, I would say. So from now until then, as it currently stands, I'm on rest because my body needs that. So when it hits about June, I'm gonna change my program completely to be more a bit more intense, just in sense of like in preseason, obviously you train very different to you do when you're in season
Of
and off
course, yeah.
season as well. So I'll change it in that sense as well. But I definitely say my aim for next season is very, very specific. I would definitely like to be the fittest winger on the team. So the fittest individual in my position. So it just means understanding what the demands are for my specific position and making sure my training program is super, super specific to match that, so I can have the best performances and the best output.
Do you have anything in mind already?
I do. So I'm gonna focus a lot on like speed, and plyometrics as well, and agility. So because those are the things that are most needed for like a wide player. Just being super quick, being really strong and powerful in the legs to kind of get that drive and get that force going. So I'm gonna focus on those things in terms of like strength and conditioning sort of elements, and then like on field, just gonna really pinpoint like the things that I'm good at. And I think sometimes what athletes can do quite a lot is like focus on maybe things that they're bad at and just continuously try to improve them. But for me, it's like, hey, if these are my strengths, like my strengths got to be so great, right? So if I can continue to improve my strengths where they're just amazing, then I can always find a way out. So just being super, super confident in like 1v1 situations when I'm taking on players. So like improving my skill ability and stuff like that. And my speed will help with that as well. And then improving like my technique with like crossing the ball and stuff like that as well.
Early in our conversation, you said that playing for the international team, you realized what kind of player you were and what kind of player you wanted to be in the future. Can you describe that a little bit more? Like, what kind of player are you?
Yes, I would definitely say like I was put in, it's completely different, right? So like in England, here at my club, it's an amazing bunch of girls. In fact, it's the best bunch of girls I've ever played with. And there's a real big combination between the clear leaders and kind of the rest of the girls. And I'm usually not really one to kind of like within the actual footballing environment, like playing environment as an athlete, I'm never usually saw myself as like captain or someone who was always there for like leadership and stuff like that. That's kind of like my work sort of off the field in the sporting environment as a whole. And I remember when I got down to the Caribbean, it was completely different. It was like they were all relying on my experience. They were all relying on me to talk up. They were all relying on me to be the leader. Like, hey, if Tini says we should do the drill this way, we should do the drill this way, you know. And I learned so much about some of the stuff that I have in me that maybe I'm not putting to use as much in England, and then just kind of picturing that and being like, hey, like like I could look like a whole different athlete in like a year's time if I really put my mind to it, and if I really added those experiences in the experiences that I learned when I was on international G.
When are you going back to play with the St. Vincent team?
I believe the next tournament is a Nations League, and that should be in February or like January, February time. So yeah, I should be back down then, which will be super good.
I love talking about rest, and you mentioned that you were in rest right now. What does that look like for you?
Oh, it's great. It's amazing. um, yeah, it honestly, it's really simple stuff, but like I feel like women's athletes will understand the most. It could just look like a going to work at 9 in the morning, finishing at 5, and going straight home, and just sitting on the sofa and watching movies. Like to me, that's great because on an average day, on a usual, like I wouldn't get to do that, right? Like come September, like I'm gonna be like, oh, I have to go to the gym today, or I have to go to training, or I have to like I don't just get to go home and go and sit on the sofa. So it means that. And it also means like just having less days working out, also having a bit more freedom with what I eat and drink, right?
Yeah.
So, maybe eating some foods that make me feel happy. Maybe an odd pizza or some ice cream or something. I mean, it doesn't mean that I go silly excessive on it because then that means I'm gonna have to like train so much harder when I'm back. But it just means I wouldn't get to do those stuff as regular on season. So it's nice to kind of use that to an advantage now. And also I'm super family orientated as well. So it just means spending so much more time with my brothers and stuff. Because a lot of the time that I spend with them now is kind of like very, very short, or it's kind of them coming to support me at football games, or because my schedule is so crazy, right? Or me going to support them, at their stuff. Whereas now we can just have chill time. Let's watch a movie. Let's go to a restaurant this evening. Let's the things that I wouldn't usually get to do in evenings.
So, what are your long-term goals in soccer?
Great. So I definitely want to get to like the highest level of playing that, I believe I can get to. And I'm on track for that. As in like continuing to improve. And every athlete has like their ups and downs. They have things that they need to overcome. And I definitely say that's the road that I'm on now. But going transitioning to being like a player to now representing internationally definitely puts me on track for that as well. And then of course my club is moving up leagues. So definitely hoping for another successful season next season, and then just continue to build and see like what's the highest level I can really really get to.
And what is it about sports that keeps you interested? And because you sound like so engaged with all aspects of the sport. I mean, sort of the business side and the training and the playing and the competition, that's a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely say the opportunities that it gives you, and I mean that like as an all-rounder. So you playing sports could mean you can meet an amazing coach who could in the future be like your manager, or your mentor, or help you into opportunities that you never would have seen or never would have been exposed to had you have not played that sport, had you have not been there at that specific moment in time. I think some of the opportunities that I've been given into like talk on panels, be a part of the leadership program for women's, help out, at colleges, at schools, go take like kids on school trips that they wouldn't usually get to go to. All these opportunities for me have come through sport. Have just solely come from me playing football and putting myself out there. So I would definitely say that's the most. That's the bit that I definitely love the most. I think it's really important to understand what specifically it is that keeps you going, keeps you driving. So I think that's something that I've done from being on the FA leadership program. That's something that we kind of dived into quite a lot. And yeah, I discovered that it was honestly just being that role model, specifically for the younger generation or for athletes that are behind me who have gone through similar things, are going through similar things, or can relate to me in any sort of way. Just showing them, never give up. There's always a way forward, and if you continue to push like day by day, you will get there. Because if I was to look at where I was 4 or 5 years ago, or if I was to stop playing football after my mum had passed, I would have never made it to international duty, right? So it's just about all those sort of things that definitely keeps me going for sure.
Did you did you want to take a break after your mother passed?
For sure. It was super, super tough. And I did take a break. I took a break for a month and it just didn't work. Like I was just in bed. Then one morning I was like, hey, you know what? Let's try some football. Because I tried everything else. I tried to read a book. I tried to watch a movie. I tried to order a pizza. I tried to play with my brothers. I tried everything else and it didn't work. So I thought, hey, let's actually try some football. How about it? Let's go back to basics. And I remember going downstairs that day and kind of after having like a really, really tough month of just like, what am I actually going to do now? Like this is the worst thing that could possibly happen to me. And the moment I started training, and I remember like I set out like 6 cones and I was dribbling in between them. And for that split 20-second period, I genuinely didn't think about the pain that I was in. And that's when I realized how important it would be for me to continue playing football, no matter the circumstances. So even if it was a case of, okay, maybe my body's not ready to compete at a high level right now, but if I just join a club that I can commit to, then that's important for me. So I stuck with it.
I want to talk about the FA Women's Leadership Program. It's a program that supports females with aspirations to work within the women's football game. And my understanding is that the big picture goal is for more women to end up in leadership positions of football. And I just absolutely love it. It's a new program, right? So, what was it
Yeah.
like to be part of one of the first classes?
Yes, it was amazing. I was part of one of the first classes. I think there was only 10 cohorts on there as well. So it was amazing for me to be a part of that 10. And it was so inspirational. I think the aim and the goal and the vision behind the program is just sums me up really, because with the way that women's sport is a massive topic in today, right? It's improving all over. And I think specifically, well, as a footballer for myself, I know more about women's football, right? So that's improving a lot, especially here in England as well, with like the women's Euros coming up and the England team doing so well and driving that sort of force for that. Then you kind of look around and think, hey, like how many managers in the men's Premier League are females? You know, or how many of them are directors? How many of them are up there on the chairboard? So it was definitely kind of gave us vision into that and kind of scope into where like what the bigger picture is. So like, if we have more women involved in sport or involved in committing to this long-term project, then that means that we put ourselves forward for more like legibility. There's more positions available for women's in sporting roles, and then we can kind of work up the ladder from there. So yeah, it was amazing. It was a very humbling experience to be a part of that first cohort as well.
What did you guys do? And how long was it? And how did it all work?
So it ran for a period of a year.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we did loads of workshops. So we met also like a load of sporting athletes as well, just females who were really inspirational. Kind of talked about that. We got involved with a lot of the university programs as well. So just kind of channeling where it all comes from, right? Because, on average, kind of the dropout for football or for females with sport and stuff kind of happens, maybe through secondary school or university or something like that. So I worked specifically with the universities on that rate, just kind of making sure that what can we do to make sure that we keep them involved. And that doesn't necessarily mean them being an athlete, it just means them maybe working in the sports performance analysis office, giving females that opportunity to do things that they wouldn't usually get to do. So there was loads of workshops on that. We also had individual mentors as well, which was great and inspirational. I'm still in contact with my mentor from that program actually, and she's amazing. She helped me a lot after I graduated from uni in terms of like finding a job and helping me to kind of continue my vision, work in a good field that I can feel like I can have impact in. Yeah, it was super heavy. We would go for like weekends. So we would go, I think we had 4 or 5 meetups, like physical meetups throughout the year. And the rest of it was kind of a mixture of remote and kind of setting tasks for you to do back in your working environment. So it was learning, but then it was also, okay, what can you put back into your community, or what can you put back into your university where you are, or your like home club?
I love how the program is focusing on getting women sort of, I don't really mean behind the scenes, but, like as support for athletes, because, I think that we forget that there's all this stuff behind all of the athletes. And if all those people behind the athletes are men, we're still in a bad situation, or we're not in the ideal situation.
No, of course, and I think that was one of the main things. That was one of the main topics for like the entire year, because, and I think this is just how sort of like it's grown to be. Often it's kind of just like, hey, like if you're not an athlete, then okay. Like, what else are you kind of going to do? Maybe you get told you can be a PE teacher or something. But there's so much. No, but there's so much more.
Yeah.
As in, like, if you wanted to go work in the performance analysis office, why should it be all men in there? Why can't we have like a few females in there as well? And I think it's at first, I think it was about the lack of knowledge. So the lack of knowledge or the lack of opportunities for there to be females in there. And like you said, like if we have them behind all the athletes as well, then it drives everyone else and it moves everything forward.
What's your impression of what the situation is in women's football? And you can answer it in terms of in England or in a sort of broader world, or women's football or women's sports, or however you want to answer it. I'd be curious, from your perspective, how we're doing.
I think in terms of where we were 3 years ago compared to now is a massive difference.
Hmm.
You turn on the TV now in England and you can watch women's football. You can have that on BBC, and that's amazing to see, because when I was younger, when I was in school, it wasn't there. So it's amazing to know that these kids who I'm teaching, or these kids who I'm helping in the younger generation, they can see that now. Because for me, it always kind of felt like, especially when I was younger, like wanting to be a footballer, it kind of felt like a dream all the time. It was kind of like, oh, I've never actually sat down and watched a game on the TV. And now it's like you could do that. So I think in terms of that, it's great. And also there's a load of more like sponsorships, deals and stuff happening as well, like the connection between WSL and Barclays, which is a really, really big one. Loads of different programs that are happening as well. We're getting more people at games. So I genuinely do think the direction it's heading in is great. It's just about keeping it that way. Because it'd be such a shame to kind of have all this drive and then it kind of just hit a blank wall. But I think it's continuing to happen like day by day, week by week. And, look, the Euros are like sold out.
Right, right, right.
And that's amazing.
Yeah, it's totally amazing. Are you good at sort of balancing, optimism that things are getting better, and also, there's still work to be done?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's no doubt in saying like it's not a secret. There's a lot of work to do, because if you was to compare that right now to men's football, and even if you was to compare, let's just say an athlete of my age, like male versus female, there's big differences. In terms of how much they get paid, how much they get supported. They have like boot sponsorships. Some of us don't have that. All there's tons of things. It's a very, very different process, I would say. So there is still a lot of work to be done to at least get it to be somewhat equal or somewhat level. But I would say, like, from where I've come from how long I've known football for, it's lovely to see it improving. It's lovely to see that there is work being done about this and we're not actually being ignored.
Yeah, for sure. Switching topics, is COVID an issue? Where is your team with that right now?
Yeah, COVID was an issue. So football stopped for like a season, and that was super tough. I know a lot of people found that hard mentally. A lot of people found it hard physically as well. For sure, myself, I found it really, really difficult to not be able to compete and train all the time, or see like the football girls all the time, because it was super, super tough. It had an impact, I guess, as well on like club finances and stuff. I wouldn't know too much about that, but for sure, I mean, everyone knows COVID had a financial impact as well as like a physical one as well, right? Yeah, it was really, really hard. And then when we did get back into playing, it was a lot of like, okay, is this game actually going to happen, or is the team going to call the game off because someone's got COVID? And it was kind of here and there. But now we're definitely at a good point where like majority of games get played. Like you hardly ever have like COVID cases and stuff now within sport.
And your fans can come and watch, no problems, right?
They can come now. Yeah, that was super strange as well. Actually, to have like no one in
Yeah.
the stadium. It's kind of like you score a goal and you're like, oh, okay. Like you used to hearing like all like the crowds like screaming and jumping up and down, or like you would look over to your sponsor and see them in the sidelines, and it was just, yeah, it was completely different. It was
Yeah.
completely different.
Yeah. Well, anything that I didn't get to that you want to talk about?
No, I mean, I think this was a really good chat actually. It's really lovely to be on. Thanks again for that. So yeah, but I think it was a really good chat. We touched on some really good topics.
Yeah. Thank you. It's been awesome. And that's our show for this week. Thank you to Tini for taking the time to record with me. Be sure to follow her on social. You can find all those links in the show notes at hearhersports.com. Following female athletes does have an impact, and a great place to start is with all my guests on Hear Her Sports. Keep tuning in to every episode of Hear Her Sports, you being here, enjoying the conversation, and spreading the word about the incredible women on the show make everything I'm doing absolutely worthwhile. There are many ways to keep the conversation going. Hear Her Sports is on social with the handle Hear Her Sports. You can send me an email to elizabeth@hearhersports.com. I love hearing from you and always respond. And if you aren't a newsletter subscriber, check it out. Between episodes, I write a few words about issues in sports, the podcast, and how to watch women's sports or follow along in other ways. Lots of listeners are reading each week, so join us there. Sign up at hearhersports.com. Until next time, bye-bye.
Perfect.
Whether you are a brand new runner or you've been running for years, there is always a new way that running can change your life, and this is what the Planted Runner is all about. Being planted also means you're ready for growth. You can start exactly where you are right now and get better. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and I've coached hundreds of runners of all ages and abilities with science-backed training, nutrition, and mental strength techniques. And on the Planted Runner podcast, I'll share it all with you. You can be a better runner at any age. I'll show you how.